Hello, everybody.
Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Gunatu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Mavidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman protect us, may he guide us and give us strength and right understanding. May love and harmony be with us all. Peace, peace, peace.
Well, good evening, Swami.
Good evening. You want to start?
Well, I want you to tell us where we are and where we're going.
Oh.
Maybe tonight where we're going.
Well, we're reading from the complete works of Swami Abhedananda, one of the 16 direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. We're in the chapter called Our Relation to the Absolute, which is part of a series of lectures given around 1920 in Los Angeles called True Psychology. And we are going to start on page 587, and we probably will finish this chapter tonight. Depends on how things go.
And by the chapter, you mean the book?
Yeah, that would also be this particular book and this particular volume. Just happens to be.
To each other and pass it along. I think some people might want to realize that we honor this Swami Abhedananda for 2 or 3 reasons. One, he was one of 16 disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, a recent superluminary in the 1800s in India, and the one that stayed longest, I think beyond doubt, in America, some 20 years, well into the early part of the 20th century, 1920. This was given, as Swami tells us, to a rather esteemed group of psychologists and people.
Well, I'd have to read the introduction again, but there's one lecture that referred to being in Los Angeles, but then earlier, so maybe he may have given these different chapters at different times in different places. So, but one of them anyway was given to some psychologists and other people interested in the relationship of mind and so forth.
This is right down the main alley. And in any event, he was considering what was then modern, and therefore we must think modern compared to India, thousands of years, American understandings of the mind, of consciousness. And I think as we move toward the crescendo of this wonderful symphony, this book, that we're right in thinking that he's sort of been saving the best for last, dealing with 3 levels of consciousness that the West has acknowledged, to whatever degree you decide has examined: waking state, dreaming state, and sleep, dreamless sleep state. And the West has not been aware, that is to say, academia, of yet a 4th state of consciousness that India has been proclaiming since way under BC. It's amazing. It's overwhelming compared to, say, the Greeks, our ancestral mountain. They had it all figured out, and they had realized through their mystical experience of the highest reality that there is yet a 4th state of what they call the superconscious, which is the ground of being in which all the roots of our daily life and consciousness exist. And also, since it's infinite and surrounding, in which we live and move and have our being, it's the superconscious state is, you could say, above and grounded in below our normal states of consciousness. So here we go. Hang on to your hat. On a horse. Whee!
The whole universe is a gigantic magnet. Its one pole is matter, and the other pole is mind. The matter is the negative pole, and mind is the positive pole of that magnet. And the neutral point is the absolute Brahman, which is neither the mind nor the matter, yet is the cause of both. But even the term cause is a relative one. The term cause can be applied to a thing only when it is related to the effect. So the causeless cause, or the uncaused cause, is an anomalous term. It does not refer to the absolute. Again, the absolute cannot be expressed by words, as it is beyond speech and thought. Both words and thoughts cannot reach the absolute. It is beyond our thought and beyond our conception. So the personal God is not the absolute. It is a phase or expression, or it can be said to be the manifestation of the absolute expression through the force of nature, and that expression will last so long as the objects to which that expression is related will last. So, if all the phenomenal world would vanish, there would be no more necessity of a creator or the personal God. Therefore, the monistic thinkers, who are the sincere and earnest seekers after the absolute, do not stop in dualism, do not stop in qualified non-dualism, but want to go deeper and still further and try to find out the absolute truth, which is beyond all changes and all relations. When they once discover this absolute truth, they find that it is the eternal consciousness, existence, bliss. It is beyond all manifestations, and that idea is beautifully described in the Rig Veda. Before the beginning of the evolution, there was neither entity nor non-entity. Now, here we notice words, entity and non-entity. They are the two relative terms. If one exists, it presumes the existence of the other, and therefore it would be a relative thing. So, when they are describing the absolute, they must describe in paradoxes.
And I'd like to think we would want to point out that absolute is with a capital A here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, when they are describing the capital A absolute, they must describe it in paradoxes. That is something which is neither this nor that, and yet it is the cause of both. There was neither entity nor non-entity, neither death nor birth nor immortality. Immortality is also a term which is relative to death. So the absolute with a capital A cannot be called immortal or mortal, because if you call it immortal, there must be something which is mortal, and you can call it mortal. There must be something which that would mean death. But in the absolute, there is only one existence which can be experienced only by the divine, capital D, intuition. It is neither one nor many. In it, there is neither space nor anything that exists in space. And it is the one being and one reality, and yet contains everything. It holds us all there. We cannot get away, and nothing can exist outside of it.
Swami, I brought you something tonight, a little present, and everybody. I just love this. We've been thinking about it, mentioning it, the last couple of Friday nights. But I just wanted to bring it to our attention. This is a Western evening. Swami is here in the United States discussing evolution, all the thoughts of the day. And the West also has its probes, like a baby in a balloon, one of these babies that has to be poking out with our fingers, as it were, into the beyond. And I like to give credit, because I think they deserve it, to the people that have a hint of all these things that the Indians, and specifically Abhedananda Swami, is talking about tonight. And one of them, is Einstein, our baby. And some of you might be surprised. I know I surely was when I first heard it, and am every time I see it. He said a human being is part of a whole, called by us the universe, in quotes, dash. A part that's us, limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, dash. A kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circles of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. Albert. He also said at one point, famously, that the world is an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. So, Swami, let's see now, because we're heading for the high ground, what's called Advaita Vedanta, the concept that there is, and this is the one prime, what can you say, more than a postulate, but like that, like a first axiom in Indian spiritual geometry, and that is that there exists an infinite shining. I like to say there exists infinity shining. And one of the Upanishads, which are the wisdom literature of illumined souls, a long time ago, climbed up above the timberline, to speak metaphorically, in India where there are no trees, and in the silence of their own inwardness and their own meditation, experience this oneness. And so they come back with their laboratory reports. That's what scriptures are anyway. Some person, he or she, writing with, under the influence of inspiration. And it's that part, the lit up part of what they wrote that we remember. The Upanishads prototypically, preeminently, primally, are the laboratory reports of the illumined souls. And so one of them says, he's shining. All this shines. So here we go. Now, Swami, it says that all these phenomena, the phenomena are the events of our life that we think we see. We ascribe it however we ascribe these states of consciousness, the three that the West looks at, specifically the waking state, not dreaming, dreamless sleep. That's the phenomenal world. And he says all these phenomena are nothing but dreams. They are like the waves in that eternal ocean of the non-dual Brahman, capital E. Individual souls are like so many bubbles. A bubble would rise on the surface of the ocean, meet other bubbles, remain together for a while, move on together for a while, and ultimately go down again into the ocean without losing their individuality, because their individuality depends upon the individuality of the ocean. My friends, I just want to tell you, in my limited experience, my small experience on this earth, and I've gone around the sun a few times on the planet, I don't remember anything more grand in its scope and expansive than this. I mean, this is one way of saying it all, isn't he? That the bubble would be on the surface for a while and ultimately go down again into the ocean without losing its individuality, because its individuality depends upon the individuality of the ocean. So these individual souls are rising in that ocean of the absolute like bubbles or waves. We think that these are our friends and relatives, but in truth, these are the cause of our bindings, the duality, the plurality, the multiplicity. Hey, who's talking? The bubble right now? Or the ocean? So from that standpoint of the absolute, these are rather regarded as the delusive attachment, the whole movie, or the delusion. We're in Hollywood, kids. They say L.A., Hollywood's a part of L.A. The whole motion picture image is so relevant to modern life. We could be looking at a concrete wall, a screen anyway, that's unmoving and blank and unified. And on it are projected these items of light. Now, if the screen is yay thick, imagine how thick the little film, if it is, if you will, of light. There's no thickness at all. And in that motion picture, as we sit in the audience, we laugh and we cry. I love the story. We've gone into it once before in eastern Oregon, where the desert begins. Lots of Indians up there. And American Indians went into a theater one time, if you'll pardon Southern Illinois pronunciation. And in that theater, I think it just might have been a concrete screen. A cowboy and Indian movie. And my brothers and sisters, and including our Native American brothers, they were laughing in all the wrong places. They were cheering on the other team. And at one point, things got pretty hot and heavy. And one of the Indians, I don't think it's a story. Everybody, including the Native Americans, have a right to say what. He got out his gun, his rifle, which he just happened to have along with him, and shot up the screen. And all of it's coming from over his shoulder, from a projector, and little squares of, still pictures that give the illusion of motion picture, the illusion of laughing and crying, the illusion of birth and death, when actually everything that we are loving in this world, the very plants and the very songs of the bird, even song, and the very animals and family, all this is the one shining. All this is what they call the capital S self. So we're all loving God. We're all loving the statement of the Upanishads that He's shining. All these shine. So if you don't mind, I'm going to go on just a little bit more because I'm on a roll, buddy, here on the horse. In fact, each one of us is like a bubble in that eternal ocean of the Absolute. And I'm going to leave it with you now, Swami.
So we're all like bubble heads, I guess, right? New meaning of the word bubblehead. Because we haven't realized our true identity. And if you bump heads hard enough, you'll burst your bubble and become one with the infinite. Then why do we differentiate? Because we do not understand our relation to the absolute ocean. But when we understand the relation of the bubble to the ocean, or the relation of the wave to the ocean, then we understand our relation to the absolute. In truth, we are living in the ocean of the infinite. Our existence is a part of the infinite existence, and our life force is a part of the infinite life force. Everything that belongs to us does not belong to us as it belongs to the universe. We simply make mistakes and suffer on account of our mistakes. A philosophy which is a true philosophy will help us in getting out of this dark abyss of ignorance and show us the light, so that we can live in this world without suffering and reaping the consequences of the works that we perform through ignorance and selfishness. Then we enjoy the life of true happiness, pleasure, joy, and peace in our hearts. If we cannot live in peace and knowledge, our life is not worth living.
Hey, my buddy who's with us in spirit tonight said, Lamb, he wants us to put that word in there. We speak quite often, I think. The phrase, God is love. And the Indians will come right in a hurry and say, yeah, and God is light. And the founding Swami, one of the readings we were having the other day, said, and God is truth, the capital T, that truth which Jesus speaks of, that specifically. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. And then one of our brothers, who's kind of our current Santa Claus, Myron, says he's coming in now. He says things with such simple profundity. And the other day he said, and got his laughter. Hey, when you're going through some of the things we're going through these days, we're in the middle of a pandemonium, you understand? That worldwide pandemonium. And after the boys paid due diligence around the table and find out what's the facts, the science, the reality, I noticed that very soon they putting that gear shift up to high gear, and they're laughing. They're laughing because they're on the other side of that ripple, the ripple effect, the mountain, and they're laughing in the joy of God. So Sid wants us to say, in addition to all these things, particularly Satchit and Ananda, which have equal signs in them, absolute existence, absolute wisdom, absolute bliss. He says, well, what about peace? And here he says, right, this for you. Then we enjoy the life of true happiness, pleasure, joy, and peace in our hearts. And that's the peace that St. Paul speaks of as the peace that passeth understanding. And somewhere here, if I can find it, and I think I may, they speak of that exact thing, the joy experienced by the women and men at the top of the mountain, realizing who they are, the joy, the peaceful joy, the joy that experiences peace. If we cannot live in peace and knowledge, life is not worth living. Our life is not worth living, says Abhedananda. Now, we're not going to get all upset and hair tousled and everything, but you know how much of the day is spent yakety-yak and how miserable and everything, miserable me, and so did this and whatnot, and criticism and negativity. All that is just chaff of the wheat, which a good storm should just blow away. And that's why they keep trying to tell us in India, you know, if you're cheerful, that just might be an indication that your nose is pointed in the right direction, like a dog, you know, toward God. Once I was in Kentucky, and we were going downhill toward the water, and somehow I didn't think we were going down to the river as fast as we should. And anyway, I was eager to get there, and the Kentucky boy in front of me said, my ears are pointed forward. There you go. Now, who's going to read? You?
No, it's your turn.
Is it really? Then why should we do all these things that make us suffer? We are not here to suffer. It was Buddha's birthday yesterday, in case anybody's interested. The full moon, on which day of the month he was born and received his ultimate nirvikalpa samadhi, his oneness with what is, and then went on to glory, coming universal. And that's what he's all about. He says, this suffering, what is this suffering all about? How can we get beyond it? We're not here to suffer. There is no other devil stronger than the devil of the darkness of ignorance. It is the ignorance that makes us selfish and makes us understand, in quotes, of course, that we're separate from each other. But the light of divine knowledge will dispel that darkness of ignorance, a room that has held darkness for thousands of years, or a cave where darkness has been for thousands of years, is instantly illumined by the stroke of a match, and the darkness of thousands of years is dispelled. He actually says that the darkness for thousands of years is instantly illumined by the stroke of a matchstick, and the darkness of thousands of years is dispelled. So says Vedanta, that you strike a match in the cave of your heart, and there you will have the light. We will then understand things as they are in reality. And for the sake of us all tonight, I'm going to just do a little typography here. I used to set type. I studied how to set type in a stick with little individual letters, and you have to set them upside down and backwards. So I'm going to put this in italics. It's a wonderful word. We will then understand things as they are in reality. There's no use in running after things. Nothing can help us unless we have that light within us. And we do. If we have not received that light within us, everything will appear as different. It is the consciousness of the absolute that removes all differences. Well, it's the consciousness of the absolute, capital A, that removes all differences and gives us the real freedom. It is what we need, and then we shall live the right kind of life. Nothing will be wrong then. Then whether we believe in God with a capital G, I guess he means the personal God, surely that as well, or in the scriptures, thou shalt believe. Do you believe? Yeah. Or in the dogmas. Your karma ran over my dogma. I want to talk to you about that. And the dogmas, the doctrines and the dogmas and the creeds are the non-essentials of religion. You see why we're in trouble? Every time you get a mystic out there in public and he or she starts walking along and saying these things, they in trouble. And I mentioned she tonight because I'm thinking a lot about Ann Hutchinson these days in Massachusetts. Had to go to Rhode Island to live. I mean, to stay alive. Found Roger Williams already there waiting. And she was the one in Massachusetts, Puritan Massachusetts. Oh boy, those guys were so eager and determined. And you know all she said? Got her in so much trouble. She said, yeah, and you know, I love it. Bring a little Southern comfort, a little Southern molasses. She was a New Englander. She said, you know, y'all, hey, you boys, y'all talking about these scriptures and these wonderful revelations happened 1,630 years ago. Whatever. Happened to this one and that one and the other. And you say that's it? Well, I want you to know something. I'm still having them. I'm still having these visions. And I'm still having these experiences. So they started chasing after her all around trying to catch her. And she just headed out to Rhode Island for her safety. I'm sorry. This still makes a lot of people uncomfortable. But not the mystics. It's our basis of union and joy and honor and appreciation and the perfume of your way of finding God and your way of waving incense. Only one God. I mean, isn't that obvious? There can only be one shining infinity. Sages call it by various names. The religion of religions is our true knowledge and true realization and true love. I hope you're looking, Swami, because I'm over and out. I can't read anymore right now.
When that true knowledge and true realization come, then everything non-essential vanishes, and everything disquieting disappears like a dream.
You can relieve yourself of that first V, right? Maybe that's not the next paragraph that you
The Christian
just
Science.
say Christian Science.
Oh, I see that the. Okay.
Yeah.
Christian Science has done one good thing in saying that matter does not exist. It is a delusion in reality. Mind is also a delusion, and that is what Vedanta teaches, that if matter is a delusion, mind is a delusion too. So discard both and go into the realm of the absolute. Then the health or the body would neither be our ideal nor prosperity. But we live in the absolute without thinking of tomorrow. Christ came to teach that, Christ came to teach that, but very few then understood Christ, and very few do understand Christ even now. Christ tried to teach that this world is a delusion, but he lived among people who were too realistic and would not let him express his ideas. He said, quote, "Take therefore no thought for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself."
Matthew 6:34.
Because the morrow is delusion, if we are part and parcel of the absolute, everything is provided for us. Why do we worry? If we have bad health, remember that we have brought it upon ourselves. Turn our attention to something that is grander and something that is nearer the absolute, and we will regain our good health. It is our evil thoughts and mental ideas that reflect upon the physical body. Sometimes, of course, we inherit certain diseases because that is the result of past bad works. We suffer in this life for the works that we have done in our previous lives. We are born of such parents, and with one stone many birds are killed, and that is the wonderful, mysterious, and inscrutable way of nature. We suffer much, but yet we do not blame ourselves. When we open our eyes and understand the law, we know that nothing is mysterious or inscrutable, and everything is governed by the law of nature.
So here we go. We have relativity. And what did you tell us they were the other night, Swami? Space?
The space, time, and causation.
Yeah. So all he's talking about here is the inscrutable, maybe, and perhaps inexorable grinding, seeming following of causation, cause and effect, cause and effect, within on the relative plane. A preceding event, inevitably, if it's exact and precise, is followed by a specific effect. And on the basis of this, science builds all of its good deeds and its good stuff. And on the basis of this, the farmers and their wives bring in the crops. You know, the women grow the food in the farm for the family, basically, called their garden. And the men grow the wheat and all that out of the economic surplus of which, food, that they grow more than the farmer needs to feed his family, will come art and religion and science and business and everything. So this inexorable grinding seeming law of the following of cause and effect, it seems to work for science. So, and the Swami in the interesting concept of India, which is something that, again, we don't really do in the West because most of us have not seriously thought about even the possibility, mythic or otherwise, of previous lifetimes. But the mystics, interestingly enough, have often thought of it, including the Jewish mystics, say even about the time of Jesus. I went to see a wonderful Jewish rabbi. I've never forgotten him, an old man, you just can't forget him. And he had our book by our founding Swami, Swami Abhedananda, in his library right there. The whole thing covered the walls practically. And he believed, as do mystics often, in reincarnation. Whatever it is, I think we might be willing to give a little on this with the Swami Abhedananda tonight. Does not our mind affect our body? does not a sweet thought put us in a better shape to go through the day
Yes.
than a sour thought that affects our mind and our emotions and pain? You know, you're a pain in the neck. Uh-huh. Well, you're not a pain in your own neck, so get out of my way, my face. And the whole thing, the more they talk about something else being wrong with the world, and some people do it from dawn to dusk, the more you have to stop and wonder, now, what is the problem and where does it lie? And they even go so far as pointing out things that the saints do, little things like somebody steps on his foot in a crowd in India. That's easy to do. And instead of yelling out in pain, or more likely in rage, the saint won't say nothing. Fellow says to him, hey, I saw that. I saw that fellow step right on your foot, crush it. Why did you not respond? He says, oh, no. I felt that was God that stepped on my foot. So whatever you like about it, and it's a way, it's a modus operandi, these Indian folks take it all on themselves. Said, oh, I must have done something to bring this on me. You know, whether it's right or wrong or this or that, however you evaluate it, I would think that might just be a little bit better way than to blame everything else and everybody else and everything but me. No, it couldn't be that I have anything to do with, let's say, the bellyache I got this morning. But didn't I see you staying up till 2 or 3 in the morning last night just to stuffing yourself with all that stuff and drinking and everything? Well, yes, you did. Well, why don't you just face facts and call it a hangover? But nevertheless, that's what he said. All he's really talking about is that law of causation, which is overcome. That's what they're telling us tonight. Is it not so? Is broken by the vision of God. And Swami actually says at one point that it's illumination that brings redemption. That we get over the problems that we've created for ourselves and other people, the wrongs that we've done ourselves and other people. We get over all of that by the redeeming entrance of the light into our hearts and souls, the awareness of God, the awareness of our unity. Well, so he just says, and everything is governed by the law of nature in the relative plane. Vedanta tells us that he's still on this rant, so prepare yourself. Vedanta tells us to take the whole responsibility on our own shoulders. That's all right. Hey, you can do that. You can bear that. God gave you big shoulders. Every individual soul will reach the absolute sooner or later. No one will be lost. Hey, y'all. I had a grandmother, we all did, probably had 2 of them, if we're lucky. One of them, I remember, used to say at prayer time, before the meal, say Thanksgiving meal, something, and it wasn't probably doctrine in all the churches of the country at that time. She said, and may the Lord bless us all without the loss of one. There is no such thing. Well, you're getting it tonight. You heard it first here in Vedanta. As eternal punishment. As punishment or reward is a temporary phenomenon. Hey, you earned it. It's a limited thing. How are you going to be paying an eternal fine, eternal imprisonment, whatever, for a limited thing? The effect itself proves that the cause is, whatever, it's not big enough. It says because temporary, as punishment or reward is a temporary phenomenon, because everything that is on the relative plane lasts only for a time, exists in time and space, and must pass away. The only thing that does not pass away is the absolute. And that absolute is like the background of all phenomena. Remember the movie screen? The absolute is the substratum of the changing appearance of the universe. The substratum of the changing appearance of the universe is like the canvas upon which the most beautiful landscape of nature is painted. It is the canvas which gives life and support to the portrait of a beautiful figure like a maiden, which is painted by an artist. So if you take away that canvas, the portrait's gone. Somebody came in and stole the Mona Lisa. Did you know that? From Paris one time. Pretended to be a workman or something. Walked off. Therefore, the absolute is the background of these individual portraits of human beings who are working and moving here and there. Human beings are like the pictures. So a true seeker after the absolute, when he dives deep into the ocean of God intuition, does not feel himself separate from the absolute, but feels that the absolute is one, and he is one with the absolute. Then he says, quote, I'm in the sun. I'm in the moon. I'm in the stars. I'm in the wind. I'm everywhere, and I cannot die. The fire cannot burn me. The water cannot moisten me. The air cannot drown me. Dry me. The water cannot drown me, he said. The air cannot dry me, but I am imperishable, immortal, deathless, and birthless. I am here manifesting my powers through these individual physical forms, but I live in all individuals. I am the one and undivided spirit. You might feel then that you may not eat with your own mouth, but you're eating also with other mouths. Then you are one with everyone. John Denver used to say we must feel that that child is my child. A soul that has realized God consciousness feels himself one with the universe. If anyone breaks the branch of a tree, it hurts him. If anyone kills an animal, it hurts him, because he sees in that tree an animal, the Brahman, which projects all animate and inanimate objects, and the Brahman which pervades all the universe with its presence and sublimity. That universal and unifying consciousness will make us rise above this mundane world, nay, above all worldliness and selfishness. And then alone we shall realize what Christ meant when he said, I and my Father are one.
The highest ideal we must consider as the unchangeable reality. The oneness is the relation of the true seeker after the absolute with the absolute, and there is nothing beyond that. When we have become one with the absolute, there is no other relation that can be higher than that. Some people may think that we again come down to the plane of the earth to play our parts. That might mean a lower step and not higher than the absolute. You may indeed come down, but never go beyond or cease to be in the absolute. Imagine a state higher than the absolute, where there are neither thoughts nor time, space, and causation. But you cannot imagine that state, because when you will imagine a state higher than the absolute, you will have to come down to the realm of thought, which is relative. You will have to come down to the realm of time, space, and causation, and that means you have come down to the plane of nations or Maya. So is that going beyond the absolute or going down to the plane of relativity where reign supreme the limitations of time, space, and causation possible? No, because there is no longer any going beyond the absolute or coming back from the absolute by one who has realized it. People who have not realized the true meaning of the word absolute and have not understood the state of that realization talk like that. But Vedanta says, now do we have a translation of that? Maybe, let's see.
Absolute. No, just a quote from the
It's just a
Vedanta
quote.
Upanishad.
So when we realize the absolute, there is left no further questioning in the mind. All doubts will cease forever. All questions will be answered forever. And we transcend all the laws of nature and even the law of cause and effect, which binds us so strongly and irresistibly on the plane of the phenomena. Then we become free and realize that freedom which is everlasting and has neither beginning nor end. Vedanta also teaches that dualism, qualified non-dualism, and monism or non-dualism are the different stages in the process of realization of the Absolute and its relation to us. It accepts them all at the same time, transcends them all. A true and sincere seeker after the Absolute, who has realized the eternal truth, says, quote, O Lord, when I think of myself as related to the physical body, I am thy servant. Thou art my Lord. When I think of my soul, which is an ego, I am thy part, and thou art the one stupendous whole. But when I think of my true self, which is the Atman, which is a part of the Absolute, then I am one with thee. I am one with the infinite ocean of existence, intelligence, bliss, and love.
Wow. Is that the
That's the
summation?
end.
Well, I think we ought to really spend a little time just kind of chewing and reminiscing on this wonderful trip, this journey that we've made together, as they say. For fun, those that want to talk about these concepts that the Swami has been dwelling on here at the end of the book, and really the whole book has been about ascending the mountain, if you will, from our typical consciousness. I won't call it normal, because boy, howdy, do we get into a lot of trouble thinking that the movie is real. So let's not just call it normal, but we call it typical. And he mentioned these terms earlier tonight, the dualistic, the qualified monism, the view of qualified monism, and the monistic or advoitic view, meaning non-dual view of reality. So I heard it explained one time, not just one time, but particularly by one of our Swamis, Abhedananda, who went to a church to talk, and they loved it. And of course, he was able to, give the whole thing. It was a very nice talk. But he pointed out that dualism can be found in the Lord's Prayer when Jesus says, Our Father which art in heaven. Personal God in that sense. And then qualified monism is right in his teachings also when he says, I am the vine and ye are the branches. And then finally he says, and this should have been enough. This should have been enough for everyone. I and my Father are one. He said some wonderful things, to the people that he loved the most, the people that he saw. Whether they treated him well or badly, whether they were kind to him in their words or not. Because he said, these things I've done, you can do greater. And I believe quite sincerely that he said, blessed are the peacemakers. for they shall be called sons of God. In modern parlance, be called children of God. But that term, children of God, and even sons of God, is not unknown to Jesus. Now, India sees, India's been around so long, these thousands of years, these cycles, until they, just like the ad for the insurance company, they just seen about everything, They've seen God-men drenched, saturated in the Spirit of God, come not often, not even frequently, but they've seen them come regularly. And they just practically always are accompanied by a feminine component, Radha and Krishna, Rama and Sita. Sons and daughters of God. And these particular superluminaries have a distinction, yes. We can all find our union with God. We can all become one with Brahman. We are already, but we don't know it. But reserved unto God. They said, I was thinking the other day that that business about the coin that occurred in Jesus' life and Ramakrishna's life. At one point, some fellow came up and, well, he might have done so, he said to him. He said, shall we pay taxes to Rome? Love this story. Because as you may remember, Ralph Waldo Emerson goes down to see his friend Henry David Thoreau, that's the way he pronounces Thoreau, he's in jail. Well, he didn't pay his taxes for the Mexican War. He didn't want that to go for armies in Mexico. Lincoln was against it, Ralph Waldo, they're all against it, interestingly enough. But nevertheless, he said to him, Henry, what are you doing in there? And his pal, whom he told, Ralph Waldo said, you're not doing anything. You're selling pencils anyway. Why don't you go into my back 40 and spend a year or two there? Anyway, why don't you go back there and try to see if you could become a lumen? And that was the origin of Walden Pond. So they were buddies. So, Henry, what are you doing in there? And Thoreau, to his great, estimable, memorable honor, said to him, Waldo, what are you doing out there? So, reserved, Jesus looks, he says, show me a coin. So the guy dug in his pocket, pulls out a coin, says, whose picture's on the coin? And the man said to him, Caesar's. Now, Jesus knew about freedom. He knew they wanted freedom from the church and state because the church at that point was tithing and beating people if you didn't pay 10%. It was kind of a tough time. So he knew about the freedom thing, said, I'm come to give you freedom. He said, Caesar's picture. And he said, give unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's and render unto God the things that are God. So there are a few things reserved in the Indian panoply to, they call them God-men, that come down, but particularly to the superluminaries, Avatar, to God himself, and that is the power of creation. So all of these other people, yes, they are one with God, and they say we too can be. There's a little distinction, kind of like Mozart coming down almost ready to write, knowing how to play the piano at the age of 4. When do you think Mozart started playing the piano, Swami? When did he write his first symphony? 8 years old, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. So there you go. Well, we've had quite a romp. Does anybody want to bring up things that they want to remind us of or inspired by? I know, but you got to bear with me just one thing here because this is for Sid. My buddy Sid. Sid's writing a book. Oh, I hope you all read his book. I'll tell you about it when it's ready. This is the nature of mind, according to Vedanta. Patanjali. This is from How to Know God, the Yoga Aphorisms of Patanjali. According to Patanjali, the mind, which is called Chitta, Satchitananda, consciousness, is made up of three components in the mind. Manas, Buddhi, B-U-D-D-H-I, and Ahamkar. Now, manas is the recording faculty, what falls on the retina of your eye, you could say, which receives impressions gathered by the senses from the outside world. Sense experience. Buddhi is the discriminative faculty, the intelligent will, that which interprets, which classifies these impressions and reacts to them. Ahamkar is the ego sense, which claims these impressions for its own and stores them up as individual knowledge. For example, Manas, the sense, the eyes, reports a large animate object is quickly approaching. Buddhi, the discriminative faculty, the discerning, rational faculty, Buddhi decides, that's a bull. It's angry. It wants to attack someone. Ahamkar, the ego sense, screams, it wants to attack me. Patanjali, it is I who see this bull. It's I who am frightened. It's I who am about to run away. Later, from the branches of a nearby tree, Ahamkar, the ego, may add, now I know that this bull, which is not I, this is all part of the deal, the dream, is dangerous. There are others who do not know this. It's my own personal knowledge which will cause me to avoid this bull in future. So in India, they claim that the source of all of our misery, the misery of separation. Now, if you believe in metaphor and believe that it's a link with reality, deeper in poetry than almost science, you might wonder if Adam and Eve, when they had to leave Eden, came to that situation of their being separate from God or in the hand of nature or held by the laws of nature like any animal. To me, Adam and Eve is the story of the transition of the human person from the animal state to the human state, this big forehead we got that discriminates and discerns and causes difference. So they say that when the ego, the firstborn of ignorance, because it separates itself out from Brahman, that's the start of our suffering. And then they say, the false identification, don't you see? The superimposition of something else that doesn't really exist, like the core of an onion. Swami said, you peel the onion, looking for the ego, you get down there, there's nothing there. But that false identification is where the suffering starts. And then the next false identification is this discriminating faculty of the mind that says, one morning when you wake up, I'm separate from God. And oh, whoa, there's a tail, thereby hangs a tail, a long sequence of excitement, drama, woe in life. And it's these two misapprehensions, first the ego, and then the identification, you see, of Brahman, the Atman, same thing, the infinite shining, false identification with a separate concept called that side of the mind. Kids, it's been a wonderful, wonderful trip. So, Swami.
Shall we close?
Don't.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is. From Brahman all, yet is it still the same. Peace, peace, peace.